A few days later, the caravan of the embassy leaves Ravenna. Orestes is accompanied until the first relay by his wife. There they separate tenderly. And Orestes looks at the carriage which was moving away. The embassy is protected by a detachment of the Roman cavalry. Salvian approaches Orestes. "I thought to see an elderly count as an ambassador." He answers with a smile, "We have a fairly simple mission. I must transmit the letters and gifts of our regent to King Oros and Prince Attila. By the way, in my childhood I saw Attila." Surprised, Salvian looks at Orestes. "So you know Attila?" "I was then only 9 years old, he was 3 or 4 more than I was. So I do not know if he remembers me because it was almost 18 years ago." "Does he speak Latin well?" "He spoke a little slowly but correctly. Already in Hunland, he had Latin and Greek teachers. He told me that he communicated a lot with Aetius, who spent 3 years with the Huns." The officer listens very attentively and asks, "Do you know Aetius?" "Very little." Pensive, Salvian speaks slowly. "Therefore, Aetius and Attila have been friends for more than 20 years. "Yes, that's right. And Attila proves his friendship by his actions. When Aetius asked to help him to support his friend Jean, then the Huns gave him an army of 60,000 horsemen. And what does Aetius do to him? I do not know." But they continue their correspondence. The family of Orestes possesses some properties on this busy road, which leads from Rome and Ravenna to the Balkans. So as not to go down to the unhealthy inns during their frequent trips to their little country, as Cicero said. But Salvian is accustomed to life in barracks and camps. So he feels at his ease in these rare evenings when the embassy stops in inns full of travelers despite the lack of comfort and mediocre cuisine. In some of these inns, too much wine was drunk. The gay songs and the music continued until late at night. After a week, the embassy arrives in Patavium, the birthplace of Orestes. They stop in a large villa of Tatul. Naturally, Orestes is very solicited. He receives many invitations from his friends. He prefers to organize a dinner for some of his closest friends and relatives. The dinner respects the ancient Roman customs. The guests get rid of their city clothes and put on long and wide shirts without belts. They leave their shoes near the door and enter the banquet hall, spanning the threshold of their right foot. The semicircular bed surrounds the round table decorated with bouquets of flowers. Orestes and 8 guests settle almost perpendicularly to the table. Semi-lying. They lean on their left hand to leave their right hand free. Salvian and the other guests sat on stools. The majority of the guests are Christians, but they continue to respect the ancient customs which are not in contradiction with their new religion. For them the table is a sacred place, a symbol of the family home. At the beginning of the dinner, Orestes gives the food to the fire and recites a short Christian prayer that resembles the traditional prayer in Vesta, the spirit of fire. The cook made considerable efforts. He bought at the market the best wines and oysters from Italy, ham and sausage from Gaul, pheasants from Greece and fruits from Asia Minor. They eat with the hand, sometimes using spoons and knives. The conversation is pleasant. One should not talk about sad things. The guests have to finish his cup at each toast and fill it for the next one. The conversation quickly became quite frank. Since the installation of the Huns not far from here, on the other bank of the Danube, we feel safer than our fathers. Thanks to the ambassadors like our dear friend Orestes. Let us drink once more his health. All guests drink their cup until the last drop. The conversation slips jokes and anecdotes towards the topical themes, The detachments of Huns warriors engaged for the defense of Gaul often cross our city. Not only for the defense of Gaul a year ago, Aetius came from the other side of the Danube with a large army to participate in the civil war, if he had come 3 days earlier. Now we could have another emperor. It is said that Joannes wished to re-establish paganism. Remember the return of the Hun army. Galla Placidia paid well for the Huns to go home quietly. And we were forced to pay more taxes. But this return of the army was like a fate for our merchants and craftsmen. 60,000 men, who want to buy gifts for their relatives and friends in our shops, is not frequent. The Huns have been controlling the northeast of Pannonia for half a century, and the inhabitants there pay less tax than us. It is said that the inhabitants of Dacia are also happy under the power of the Gepids, the vassals of the Huns. Poor Roman Empire. People feel better under the power of the barbarians than under the power of their emperors. Orestes thinks that his guests have become too talkative before the second service. I suggest you listen to a famous musician from Milan and play board games. 2 days later, on the frontier of Hunland, Orestes returns his Roman detachment except Salvian and 2 soldiers who speak Hun and Goth. The Romans will be accompanied by a detachment of Huns warriors whose commander, Sabir, speaks well Latin. Salvian is lucky. Sabir served under the command of General Stilicon. Then was an officer of the imperial guard of Emperor Honorius. The Roman asked with interest, "How many years have you served in the imperial guard?" "In 406, I participated, under the command of Uldan and Stilicon, in operations against the Goths in Italy. After the victory near Florence, I was selected for the imperial Hun Guard, where I remained until its dissolution by Honorius, 5 years ago, result of the intrigues of his sister Galla Placidia. I'm sorry we did not cut our heads last year." Salvian retains his indignation. "So you often saw the emperor?" The equestrian guard accompanied him on his travels and his movements between his various residences. After a pause, Sabir continues with contempt, "But he led a bizarre life, mainly concerned about his poultry. It is said that the Romans have had so few emperors so shabby." Salvian asks in a stern tone, "Then why did you serve him?" Sabir looks at him. "At the beginning of our service, we took oaths of fidelity to him according to the Roman and Huns customs. But I could not imagine it that way." The Hun smiles. "It is true that he created us a magnificent uniform and he paid us well." Salvian calms down. "Then you saw Attila in Italy." The prince spent 4 years in the imperial palace in Ravenna. He was well educated and read much, often came to our barracks when he was free. We often went out hunting in the mountains with him and accompanied him on his travels. "Do you know Aetius?" Aetius was 5 years older than Attila, but they did not feel the difference, often met and talked about very varied subjects, discussed common plans. Salvian stops questioning the Hun officer so as not to arouse his mistrust, but in his head the voice of Sabir continues to repeat his echo. "Discussed common plans, discussed common plans."